Hi, welcome back to my channel. Before I start this video, I'd just like to apologise for the lack of activity and me not doing any From the Anvil videos, even though I had promised to do them for quite a while. There are a few reasons why I haven't been doing them. One, work. I've been working quite a fair bit. Two, it's been the NHL playoffs over here in Canada, and that's taken up a lot of my time and taken a lot of my attention. And three, it's just time, really. But I've been meaning to do this video for a while, so I think it's only fair that I make one today. And in today's From the Anvil, I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm not going to be talking about pre-season friendlies or transfers because, well, I don't really want to get into that. And let me tell you why. It's just the lack of transfer activity is making me, well, upset. And that may sound pathetic, but it's making me upset. Because it's just putting me in a bad mood and it's painful. And it's all the owner's fault. I will say this though. The owners are the ones who say that they back Moyes and they're not backing him. As it stands, if West Ham go on a really bad run of form come January, Moyes will be sacked, new manager will come in, and I bet you now, funds will be suddenly available. How can these owners back a manager so much that they reappointed him, put faith in him, and then refuse to give him money? I will say another thing. David Moyes needs to put his foot down with his bosses and demand transfer funds. Because that way he will most likely get them more than not ask at all. He needs to start making a stance against his bosses. Pellegrini and Husilos did that and they got money. Moyes should do the same. I'll just leave it on that for transfers for now. Might do a bit of transfer news in another video, but in today's From the Anvil, just to get back on topic, I'm going to be talking about why I support West Ham United. And I have done so for the past 13 years. So I'm going to tell you why I like the club, what made me start supporting West Ham, and some of my favourite memories during the last 13 years. Okay, so let's start from the top. I'm going to admit I'm not from London. Not that that should be a big issue because you don't have to be from the city to support the team, but I'm not a Cockney lad, I'm not from the East End, I'm actually from South Yorkshire. Okay? I'm a northerner. Don't hate me, Hammers from London. Okay? But the reason why I started supporting West Ham was just through a love of football to start off with. There are videos of me trying to kick a ball around in my dad's old house. I was 2.5 years old, and I know that because it was Euro 2000, and my dad made me a jersey with James 2.5 on the back. There's also a video of me singing along to the Match of the Day theme tune and pretending to kick the ball. And so, football's always been around. And as for supporting West Ham, I can tell you specifically what game it was. And Hammers fans, you'll remember this one because of the scoreline and because of the goals in it. It was in the 2006-07 season. I was sitting in my dad's living room watching a big TV and just some football game was on. I didn't really know who it was. But it was the West Ham versus Spurs game at the Bowling Ground. And I just remember Carlos Tevez smacking in that free kick. And I was like, wow. That's a good goal. My dad said, what's happened? And I said, West Ham had just scored. And West Ham were winning 2-0 at that point. If you don't know what free kick I'm talking about, I'm on about this one.
It's Carlos Tevez, and he scored!
From that moment onward, I started taking interest in West Ham. Watched a couple of games, got to know some of the players, and then came the final day of the 06-07 season in that great escape. And I watched that full game. I think that was me watching my first ever full West Ham game, when Tevez got that 1-0 win at Old Trafford and kept the Hammers up. And Carlos Tevez was actually the player that got me interested in supporting West Ham. So a big thank you to him. What I remember about the team back then was, well, the names and the faces. People like Nigel Reo-Coker, Yossi Benayoun, Rob Green, Mark Noble obviously was there, Matthew Etherington, Dean Ashton, Matt Upson. Those were the days, really, because those were genuinely hard-working players. They weren't flashy, glamorous names. They were hard-working players who gave it all for that club. And that's one thing I liked about West Ham as well. The players seemed to work really hard, no matter what the situation or who the manager was. They worked hard for the badge and clearly cared. It's just a shame some players in this day and age don't seem to have that attitude. When I was 12 years old, I had the opportunity to go and see West Ham play at the Bowling Ground, and it's a day I'll never forget. Now I was really young, but your first ever visit to a Premier League game, especially when it's a club you support, is just memorable. It was in the 2009-10 season. It was West Ham United versus Hull City. I remember everything about that day. The walk from the tube station to Upton Park, the market opposite the stadium, going into the ground and sitting in the Sir Trevor Brooking stand, just the atmosphere, the bubbles, the singing. What a stadium. What a stadium. The Bowling Ground was always rocking. You could just feel like the family and the tight-knit atmosphere in there. It was just amazing. You know, hundreds of thousands of Cockneys lining the streets, singing their hearts out and intimidating the opposition, and also getting behind the boys. That was one of the reasons, and probably still is, one of the reasons why I support West Ham. Those fans represent a working class culture, and they are just their own kind. I'll say this now, I'd rather support West Ham than support a big top 4 bandwagon team. It's not for me. Also because I'm from South Yorkshire, from like a coal mining area, if you could call it that. So I know what it's like to be working class. The north of England generally is. West Ham was no different. The game itself, West Ham won 3-0. Valon Barami, Junior Stanislas and Carlton Cole got the goals in that game. Gianfranco Zola was manager at the time, so it shows how a lot's changed in 10 years. But I remember that team very well. Rob Green was in goal. I think it was Tompkins, Upson, Danny Gabidon, maybe a Lunga at left back. Midfielder was Mark Noble. Who else was in there? Scott Parker, Super Scotty Parker, Stanislas, and Barami. Then there was Cole and Alessandro Diamanti. Think I got that all correct. That's just thinking about it right now. It's just so different. Like I've said, that team was so different. But it was a great 3-0 win nonetheless. And actually, on the way home, I do remember that as well, because we couldn't go to the Upton Park tube station. We had to walk all the way through Plaistow. If there's any people from the East End here, please attest to this if you can. But I remember walking past in Plaistow, and it was just seemed like very like black buildings, dark buildings, very industrial. And there's even something called a second-hand shop, and it was built out of corrugated iron. I couldn't help but laugh at that. We got on the tube and back down to Canary Wharf, where I was staying, and that's where a lot of the West Ham fans and actually West Ham players are based. Players more to the point. Got changed and went out for a meal at Oaxaca, which is some Mexican restaurant. I know I was very specific, but as I talked about that, everything just came flooding back to me. It was an incredible day out. Absolutely loved it. My little 12-year-old self singing my heart out and getting behind the boys in claret and blue. And especially because the stadium is no longer there, it made it more special. Never forget that day for as long as I live. There was one other time that I got to see West Ham play in person, but it wasn't at the Bowling Ground. Let me explain. I'm from Doncaster, and I was a season ticket holder at Doncaster Rovers because they were my local team and the closest thing I could get to watching professional football every weekend. I had a season ticket at Doncaster for around 4 years, actually, and I actually featured on the front cover of the tickets, and I'll show you that right now. I was part of a promotional campaign for the hashtag My Local Team for the 2015-16 season. I was back visiting some friends for Christmas 2014, and Rovers were playing in an FA Cup third round game against Bristol City. The media team were taking pictures for promotion and asked me to be in it. Just signed a form and agreed. So that's that. I saw Doncaster Rovers play West Ham United in the Championship in August 2011. I remember the game quite well. I was sitting in the east stand of the stadium. West Ham won that game 1-0. Kevin Nolan got the goal after 4 minutes, just like the number that was on his back. The away end was absolutely packed full of West Ham fans, but Rovers didn't win the game. That was a bit of a rock and a hard place for me because I didn't know who to support. Hammers, Rovers. Couldn't make my mind up. Sam Allardyce was the manager at the time, and there were players in there such as Rob Green, Mark Noble was obviously there, Sam Baldock, George McCartney and Winston Reid. And West Ham got promoted that season via the playoffs. Rovers, on the other hand, relegated and changed the manager. Supporting Doncaster's been tough, in all honesty, because they've had up and down with relegations. But I don't think it compares to West Ham, because Doncaster at least has a good owner. Yeah. That's what I remember about seeing West Ham live for the most recent time, and it was 9 years ago. I was 14 years old. But I was looking forward to the game because West Ham would have been a tough opposition. They'd just been relegated from the Premier League and still had a lot of quality. Doncaster played well but lost the game 1-0. Well, does it mean all time or current? Of all time, I would probably say Scotty Parker, because he was a good captain and he was a hard-working player, and he was one of my favourite players growing up. So I will say him, just because of those reasons. Current favourite player, I wouldn't limit it down to one. I like Declan Rice, obviously, because I think he's a very good young player who understands what it means to be West Ham. The way that he's able to cover a lot of ground, get back, make tackles and then go forward, he's very important. And he's even as far as going to be the best defensive midfielder in the Premier League right now. And I mean that. Other players that I like are, well, Mark Noble, because he's been a loyal servant to the club and he also understands the culture of West Ham. He is Mr. West Ham after all. He's an East End boy, loves the club, and he's been a good captain to us. Other players that I like are Jarrod Bowen, because I think he's a very versatile and triple threat role midfielder. I like Mikel Antonio because he's physically strong and he's good with goals. Players that I used to like were Manuel Lanzini, but he's never been the same since he got injured before the 2018 World Cup, and it's really ruined him. Because Lanzini is an energetic player with his pace, and he's got skill, but he's lost his firepower, and I want him to get it back. But he doesn't seem to be getting it back. I also do like Felipe Anderson, but I do think at times he's been a bit precious or lazy. And his first half of this season, he was doing quite well. First half of the 2018-19 season, he was quality. He had 8 goals in like 19 games, and after that, it was 1 goal in 19. He's another player that, should he choose to stay, I want him to find his form back. West Ham's priding itself on having a good youth setup, and long may that continue. You've seen a lot of good hammers come through the ranks in the 90s and in the late 2000s. Declan Rice most recently has come through the ranks. And players such as Connor Coventry, Grady Diangana and Josh Cullen as well. And Moyes notices that, and this is the good thing. Moyes notices the youth setup. He notices that there is potential in that team and wants to build the RB Leipzig model. And that I'm not against at all. Because Moyes is a manager with a plan. I said that in one of my other videos. Moyes is a manager with a long-term plan for West Ham, and it's just a shame that his bosses will not back him. My favourite West Ham goal? That's between two. It's either Andy Carroll's overhead kick against Crystal Palace or the Dimitri Payet free kick against Manchester United. Both goals made me scream at my laptop, so I can't pick between those two. Really. If I have to pick one, though, I will say the Payet free kick. Because it was a special goal by a very special player, and the best I've seen in a West Ham shirt in my time supporting the club anyway. It's a shame that Payet kicked off the way he did and ended up leaving. But it is what it is, I guess. He made some unforgettable memories in a fantastic farewell bowling season. Andy Carroll, on the other hand, was an underappreciated player. Yes, he did get injured. Yes, fans complained that he was a waste of the wage bill. But Andy Carroll always stepped up for West Ham when they needed it the most. He always got those equalisers or game-winning goals when West Ham needed it the most. He was a very good impact sub. And that goal against Crystal Palace with the overhead kick, wasn't expecting that because he usually uses his head. But he just thought he'd take it and hit it in the back of the net. And that was in the light of Payet saying that he wanted to leave. Lanzini stepped up in that game, and Antonio got 3 assists. Well, I moved to Canada in 2014, and every time I've gone back to the UK, I've always tried to say to myself, I might take a trip down to London, to the London Stadium and see West Ham play. It's just usually the time of when I go back home, and because I've got a lot going on, I never get time to. But I'm going to make it a promise in the future to go to the London Stadium, although it will be difficult. Let me tell you why. Because mentally it's difficult because it's not going to be the same as the Bowling Ground, and I don't know what to expect. Really. It's like ever since West Ham left the Bowling Ground, the club's not been the same. It's lost its identity massively. I don't know what to think about the bowling and leaving there and going to a bigger stadium. Wasn't really necessary, I don't think. Because I'm not personally happy with West Ham being a big top 6 club. It's just what the owners promised. I'd rather not be that. I'd rather just be simple old West Ham that everyone knew from back in the day. That's why going to the London Stadium would be hard for me. I wouldn't have the same connection as I did 10 years ago. But I still do support the club. I still will watch the club week in, week out. But going to the stadium, I'll see about it. Well, I actually want to work in sports broadcasting. I recently graduated with a diploma in radio and television. I won't say the name of the post-secondary college, but I've graduated from there and I'm looking for jobs in reporting. Sports reporting is a big industry, particularly in North America. And I think football, or soccer as they call it here, is a growing sport with the MLS and other leagues that are forming. Alphonso Davies is the main man. He actually grew up in Edmonton, where I live, and the whole city's got their eyes on him. A lot of people here were watching the Champions League final and watching him boss it. And watching him play week in, week out, he just gets better and better. He's a pleasure to watch. With sports here in North America, it's a very vast industry. There are tons of different sports. There's hockey, American football, baseball, basketball. You can imagine. That's one of the reasons why I want to work into that industry. And because of my love for West Ham, I got a love for the sport. When I went to North America, I quickly learned the sports, the teams, the personnel, started supporting my own teams here. And was able to put my writing and broadcasting skills to the test at school, online, and through my own blog. If you didn't know, I've got my own blog actually. I'll put a link in the description so you can all go and check that out. And also, just to talk football on a more professional level, I did an interview with Nicky for West Ham Fan TV, and I'll put the link into the description as that as well. Current opinion on West Ham right now. It's a number of negative things. It's bleak, despairing, deflating, sad, and unforgivable. The owners of the club can't be forgiven for what they have done in the past. They've ruined West Ham United. When they leave the club, West Ham will be better. It won't be the same as it was, but it'll be better. There'll be a better atmosphere around the stadium. There'll be a better buzz around the fan base. It'll be happier times. That is for sure. My biggest problem with the owners is either lack of spending money, panic buying, or just not putting the hands in the pockets. I don't understand how the owners can say that they are skint and the club is skint. And Sheffield United are signing an £18 million goalkeeper. Wolves are bidding $20 million for an Arsenal player. And West Ham are supposedly skint. You're billionaire owners and you're supposed to be fans of West Ham. So why are you killing the club that you claim to love so much? Answer me that. Why have you ruined the club that you say that you've supported, that you say you understand the traditions of, and yet you sack managers, stab them in the back, or don't do anything to help them? The owners did this with Gianfranco Zola. They did it with Slaven Bilic, and that was cruel. I was sad when Bilic left, because Bilic is a true hammer. You know what I'm saying? He played for the club, he loved the club. The owners stabbed him in the back in the cruelest way possible. The owners are going to do the exact same with David Moyes at this rate. They are going to stab him in the back, betray him, and run him into the ground. We are bad when it comes to player scouting and player management. We are bad. Very bad at it. Selling our best players. And the fans out there who are saying they want Anderson and Lanzini gone this summer, you will be the ones who will be the first to complain when you say that West Ham sell the best players. That is what is going to happen. If the owners don't go, the very least thing to do is get a director of football in. Because if the owners won't go, we have a director of football. Director of football can run the transfers like Huselos did. And I supported that because Huselos did wonders in that transfer window in 2018. Made me happy that summer. It's what we need, director of football. Or Trip Smith, one of the directors, to up his bid and try and buy the club from David Gold and David Sullivan. There's been like 5 takeover rumours this summer. They just don't come out of nowhere. Really hoping something comes along one day and someone buys the club. Just because I want West Ham back. I want the old West Ham back. Where we didn't have to worry about shocking transfer windows. Where we didn't have to worry about our best players being sold and not being replaced. I'll always love the club, but I'll never support the regime. I'll get behind the manager. I'll get behind the players. I won't get behind the owners. They don't deserve any of my money. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like and subscribe for more content. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos these days just because it's a self-promise and I'm going to get more of a chance to just budget my time a little bit better. As the season approaches, I'll be doing game reviews, game previews and weekly comment section. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. I'll see you all in the next video.